Hey guys, I'm Carina. I promised I would do a Q&A to answer some questions that are too long to answer in 140 characters on Twitter. So here I am. I've got about a half an hour before I have to leave for work, so I'm just going to try to do this quickly. The first question is there any more word on a physical release of your book? I don't really know what the deal is with physical copies of my book. I know about as much as you guys do at this point. At some point they were supposed to happen, and then now I don't even know if they're going to happen. But part of the reason why I'm doing this Q&A is because we did a galley print of the book a while back, a second galley print, which means basically it's a print of sort of an uncorrected proof, so there are typos, which are physical copies. And they messed it up. I don't know if you can see, but it says Eternal Night, and then there's just the tiniest little T. Which means that I have a whole bunch of copies that I can give away because they're a little messed up. So I'm going to do a giveaway. If you tweet me with the hashtag Eternal Night, one time only, between now and midnight Pacific time on Friday, which is next Friday, which is the 20th, I'll put all the tweets into a randomizer and I'll choose 3 people to get these. We'll do it for all over the world. I'll send them wherever you are. So yeah, do that. The cool thing about the book right now that I'm excited about is that Warner Brothers optioned it for TV. So next year we might see it go into development and we'll see what happens there. The next question is, are you going to write another book? Yes. I wrote one over the summer. I haven't had a chance to revise it or edit it or anything because I've been mired in the originals. It's not a sequel to Eternal Night. It doesn't have any supernatural creatures in it. It's just about 3 teenagers dealing with life. But hopefully there'll be some news about that sometime in 2016. Next question is, why do you use your middle name? I've used my middle name professionally most of my life. I started using it when I was writing as a journalist for Zap To It. And I really just do it just because Adly is my grandfather's first name, and I like to pay homage to him or honor him. I also share my middle name with my mom and a lot of my cousins and aunts and uncles, so that's why I use it. Next one is a big one. What were you like in high school? I was anxious. I was always worried that I always felt like I was like too loud or I took up too much space in a room or in the world. That changed a little bit when I was like a sophomore after 9/11 because I felt like I had something to say. I was raised Muslim and I went to a school where a lot of people were very tragically impacted by 9/11, including my family. And processing that changed me a lot, and it gave me a little bit more of a voice, but I still really felt like I just was like less cool or less pretty or less popular or less, worthy than the people that I was around. I have 4 really good friends still from high school who I love, love, love to death, and they're like my family, even though we don't really see each other as much as I would like to because we're all spread out across the country now. But yeah, I was not the cool, confident person that you see today. How do writers and editors decide which scenes are going to cut from an episode? With torture is how we decide it. For me, it's the most difficult part of the process. It's essential, obviously, but it's so difficult for me. And it's just math. Like episode 214, which was the werewolf wedding episode, came in at like 60 minutes when we got our first cut, and it was beautiful. And then they were like, oh, by the way, cut 20 minutes out of it. So that was kind of difficult. First thing we do is we look for moments that maybe didn't work as well in practice as they did on the page, whether that's a performance issue or a directing issue or just something that feels off in the greater context of the show. Then eventually we just start cutting scenes that the story can still make sense without. That was a bad sentence, but you get it. For example, episode 214, we cut 2 major scenes that I loved. One was with Cole and Rebecca struggling to save him, and really bonded those 2 together. And then another one was Cammie and Haley. After the wedding, Cammie tells Haley about Hope and her magical powers. I was really upset to lose this scene, particularly because this was the scene that made that episode pass the Bechdel test, which was important to me because feminism, yay. But we also could sort of understand that we could understand the story without that. We could understand that Cammie would probably have told Haley about that off screen. I wish you guys could all see the full episodes. I wish we had all of the time in the world, but we don't. Next question. Favorite Taylor Swift songs and why? My favorite, I have 2. I love the song Mine because the line, "You made a rebel of a careless man's careful daughter," is my favorite. And I love All Too Well because it sort of took all these little real moments about almost running red lights and, refrigerator lights, and it turned them into magic. And I think that's what love does. What's your favorite thing that you've written? I have 2. There's a scene in episode 120, which was my first episode of TV ever, so it's very, very, very special to me, in which Klaus and Haley are in the nursery, and he tells her that he still refers to Michael as his father because Michael has done damage that only a father can do. I was really proud of that line and of the connection between Haley and Klaus in that scene. And then there's another scene in episode 214 that's sort of less, it's less impactful as sort of on a grand scale for the show, but it was special to me. I will start from the very beginning of my life and tell you that the first time that I was exposed to any gay people at all was on TV. It was on Dawsons Creek. And I think the fact that they had Pacey, who was sort of everybody's favorite cool character, stand up for Jack, who was a gay guy struggling to come out at school, really shaped the way that I grew up to understand that. I'm trying. My dog. I'm struggling. He's right there. I'm struggling to say this properly without offending anyone. It helped me be more tolerant because I grew up, immediately feeling like being gay was just okay. And I was very tolerant of it in high school because of that. And ultimately I, have been very vocal. I hate the word tolerant. I shouldn't have used that word. You don't have to tolerate human beings. That's stupid. But I was very accepting, as everyone should be. And I credited a lot to this sort of Dawsons Creek storyline. So, as a little bit of a nod to that, in episode 214, there's a scene where Aiden comes to Jackson, who's sort of his alpha and the guy he looks up to and the guy he's always looked up to. And Jackson makes it very clear to Aiden that Aiden should love whoever he wants to love. And I know there's a lot of things that are problematic about that. Like, I don't mean to say that some straight white macho dude has to validate anybody else's existence or anybody else's love. But I had been so affected by that Dawsons Creek scene that I really wanted to write our sort of supernatural version of that. So that was a special scene to me, and I was really glad that it made the final cut despite all of the madness with cutting 20 minutes out. Also, I just loved any scene that had Colin Waddell and Nathan Parsons in it because at the time they were probably my closest friends on the show, and it was always really fun to see them in scenes together and to sort of challenge them and to see what they could do with that bond because they were also close off screen. Next question is, why do you hate Teen Choice? Okay, so a while back I tweeted something about Teen Choice being rigged. And it upset a lot of people because they felt like I said that because the originals didn't get nominated. And I promise you that's not why I said that. I actually don't really think of the originals as a teen show, even though we have Davina on it. And even though it's on the CW, because it's just not really, it's just not what I think of. So I wasn't offended by us not getting nominated. And I should also say that I really like Teen Choice. I've gone to 4 of the award shows. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that have won surfboards, and they're awesome. This year, Grant Gustin and Nina Dobrev won surfboards, and they're my friends, and I think they're fantastic. But here's what I don't like about Teen Choice, and you can take this or leave this. Teen Choice involves online voting and activating a fan base to essentially promote the show. And this year, I saw just so much bullying and nastiness and spam spread from the Teen Choice campaigns. And the truth is, and this is in the official rules for Teen Choice, so it's not like I'm surprising anyone, you can vote your favorite only into the top 4. And then from those top 4, the Fox producers, who are not teens, choose who's going to win. The winner isn't chosen by fans. It's based on who's going to come to the show, who's going to attract ratings to the show, and sometimes even who's got a connection to a Fox show or a Fox movie. There's absolute value to being chosen by those Fox producers. I'm not saying that that's like not cool. It is. I mean, the Academy Awards are voted by a bunch of people in suits, and that's still a big deal. It's awesome to win, and people who do win should be super happy, and people whose favorites win should be super happy. But it was very disheartening for me this year to see fans being mean to other fans for the sake of a contest that's voted for by a bunch of guys in suits in Burbank or Century City. I don't know where Fox is. Anyway, that was my point. It wasn't to disparage any of the winners because I love them, and I hope that maybe one day the originals will win a Teen Choice Award. I don't know. What are your favorite websites? I have 2. Well, other than Twitter, which I visit 78,000 times a day. You're going to laugh at me, but my favorite website is called iHeartOrganizing.com. And it has all these different, like, DIY, organizational things that make me feel very zen. I never do them. I never do the DIYs, but I like to know that they're out there and that they're possible and that maybe someday I'll get my life together. And then the other website that I have bookmarked that I go to 1,000 times a day is azlyrics.com, because I have a weird compulsion where I have to look at the lyrics to like every single song that I've ever heard. I always have since I was a kid. I used to like read those liner notes, and if a CD came without lyrics in the liner notes, I was basically devastated. The next question is, why do you read hate sites? I don't. I read everything. One, I don't think there's anything wrong with Googling yourself. And I realize how that sounded, and I mean it in all the different ways. But I like to know what the narrative is out there. And when I was a journalist, it was important to see how people were responding to my articles. And now I think it's important to see how people respond to my book and how people respond to what I put out there into the world, and to sort of, if you can't control the narrative, at least to sort of be aware of the narrative that's out there about you. I've eased up a lot on relaxing when there's untruths out there about me, which has happened a lot this year, because that just happens and you have to deal with it. But I still like to know what people are saying about the show. Also, I'm a big fan of the show, so there's nothing I love more than reading about like theories or opinions. Even there are people online who don't necessarily love everything we do that I just think are brilliant, and there's one person on Tumblr, her Tumblr is Sickly Scribe, and I come into the writer's room all the time and I'm like, Sickly Scribe said this and I think she was right, maybe we should adjust this. And a few other people in sort of that circle that say really smart things, often critical about our show. So I'm not reading hate sites, I'm reading everything. If you think I'm stalking your blog, I'm probably stalking your blog. Whatever, Taylor Swift gets to do it. I can do it. She has less time than I do. Next. Why haven't you done a crossover yet? Okay, so Julie and Mike, my bosses, have answered this question a lot. In that we think about crossovers often, and we just have to find the right moment for it, or The word they always use is we have to find an organic place to do it. And what that means is basically finding a place where it works and makes sense for both shows. The Flash and Arrow do a ton of crossovers, and it's awesome for them. I love them, and I think they're fantastic. It's a little bit easier for them because, one, I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I think that their actors are sort of contracted into the DC universe, whereas ours are contracted to their specific shows, so we have to work around their desires and their schedules and their, you know, all those things. But also, and much more importantly, The Flash and Arrow are what you call procedurals, which means that most episodes, not all, but most episodes have a beginning and an end to a story. So like a villain of the episode that is vanquished by the end of the episode, or, you know, in some way defeated by the end of the episode. And then they also have an overarching mythology for the season that in some episodes just gets touched on, and in some episodes it becomes much more important. Our shows, Vampire Diaries and the originals, really only have overarching mythologies for the season, where our shows are not procedural, they're serialized. So that means that, like, the end of every episode, there's something driving us in a sort of urgent way into the next episode. And it's hard to find a time when the characters on both shows can take a break from that crazy mythology and go either help or hurt the characters on their shows. It's never easy. So that's why we haven't really done a ton of crossover yet. And we totally talk about it. We think about it all the time. And hopefully we will do one, because I would love to write any of the characters on that show, but especially Stefan and also Matt Donovan. I literally asked Caroline Dries if we can just have Matt Donovan on a regular basis. I don't know why. It wouldn't be very organic anyway. What's your favorite book? I have 3 favorite books, and they're all very different. The one that I recommend to people all the time is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. It's about a guy who goes back in time to stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And it is like my all-time favorite book. I want to read it again right now. I think I loaned my copy to someone and I should get it back. But it's fantastic. It's such a thriller. It's so interesting. They're doing a Hulu series starring James Franco, which I'm intrigued about. But yeah, highly recommend that book. It's so cool. My all-time forever favorite book of like my entire life is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. It's about a girl growing up in New York during the Great Depression. And I love it so much. I can quote passages from it. I used to have my little sister read it to me, and while she was reading it, like, I was so jealous that she was reading it and I wasn't, so I just tell her to start reading out loud. And then my final favorite book that is difficult to call a favorite because it is very disturbing is Columbine by Dave Cullen, who is sort of one of the forefront journalist after the Columbine massacre. And I picked up the book because on sort of the 10th anniversary of the massacre, and because I couldn't remember it. I was really young when it happened, and I couldn't remember the details, and so I grabbed this book, and I couldn't put it down. It's very interesting. It changed the way that I think about violence. It gave me compassion for the most unlikely people. It made me understand fate. It made me understand mental illness. I was changed by reading this book. That said, it's not a pleasant experience to read. I literally threw up on an airplane because I was so disturbed by what I was reading. But I'm glad that I read it. On that dark note, here are some fun questions. One Direction or Hanson? One Direction, but that's a tough one because Hanson is very talented. I'm just currently obsessed with Harry Styles. Lipstick or lip gloss? Lip gloss, though I really just use like this. I have lip gloss on right now. It's very pink. But I usually use just Lucas Papa ointment, that Australian stuff. What's your favorite concealer? None. I use my foundation, but like in general, I'm 28. If I look tired, fuck you, it's because I'm tired. And I don't feel bad about it, and you should leave me alone because I work really hard, and if I'm tired, I deserve it. What's your favorite place to get your hair done? I go to Dry Bar a lot. Famous in Love or Truly Madly. These are 2 books by my friend Rebecca Searle, who is writing this fantastic series called Famous in Love about behind the scenes romance in Hollywood. And she actually just started production or pre-production on her pilot, which she's doing with Marlene King, and I'm super proud of her. That's for ABC Family, or Freeform, I guess they're calling it now. But yeah, get excited. And I like Truly Madly better, but I like them both. Atlanta or Vancouver? Vancouver. Sorry, Atlanta. I like the weather in Vancouver better, which is weird because it rains all the time, but I guess I'm a gloomy person. Sorry. Where do I definitely have to eat while I'm living in New York City? Ruby Rosa is my favorite restaurant in New York. It's like pasta and pizza and terrible things for you. Really good salads, though. But they're all like gourmet. I go there basically every time I'm in the city. It's also a really good place to go and get a huge table with a ton of friends and just drink a ton of wine, which is my #1 favorite activity. Do you like avocados? Yes. Pink or purple? Pink. This my room is pretty pink. That sleeping dog. He's just like tucked over in the corner sleeping. Last year, Julie told us that they cut a Caroline mention during a Klaus Ansel discussion. Can you tell us more about what they said? I'm not sure if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I guess I'll tell you briefly. Episode 207, Ansel was listing times that he had seen Klaus be happy from the other side. And he said something about painting and something about traveling. And we had originally had a line in there that said, and when you dance with the blonde in Mystic Falls. And I'm not sure why we cut it, but we cut it during the script stage, so it wasn't filmed. And I'm not the one who cut it, so I don't know why. It was Tatia or Aurora Klaus's first love. I got confused. They were different kinds of love. Tatia came first chronologically, but I think that was sort of a young puppy love, and Tatia had a more profound connection with Elijah. Aurora was Klaus's first love as a vampire, as the man he was going to be for all eternity. So both were very important and pivotal. I think we all kind of have a lot of first loves. Betty or Veronica? Betty. And also I'm so excited for Riverdale, which is they're developing for the CW, and I guess they're starting to cast it. Greg Berlanti's doing it, who I love. I used to steal my cousin's Archie comics until like my mom would take them away from me and be like, come to dinner, Carina. You have to stop reading the Archie comics. So I'm really excited they're doing Archie, and it sounds like they're going to make it very inclusive. I heard that they're casting a hearing impaired actor for Jughead, which makes me very, very happy. Will we see more development from Hope this season? Her walking was the best scene ever. There's another question that asks if we're ever going to see Hope's first words. And I don't know. Those babies that we work with, their names are Blake and Charlie. They're the cutest things you've ever seen in the entire world. They're so fun and they're so cuddly. But they're babies, and they're very well behaved, but you can't make them act. You can't make them say a first word or laugh on cue or cry on cue or whatever. In episode 302, we just needed her to take like 2 little steps, and it took so long, and it gave us all heart attacks and required, you can't see it on screen, but we literally had her older brother standing right, Phoebe and Joe were like this, and then little Hopi came like from, down the balcony kind of, and Phoebe and Joe right here, and we had Blake and Charlie's little brother standing right next to Joe, just off screen, so that she would sort of look their way and be intrigued. It was not easy. So yeah, the answer to that is, I do not know. Who's the hardest character to write for? Hope. Everyone else, I think I've sort of gotten into the groove with, and there are very difficult scenes for certain people, but no character specifically is more difficult to write than another. If you could choose any CW star to guest star on the originals, who would you choose? I would choose to bring back Colin Waddell to the originals. I miss him and I miss Aiden. But if that doesn't count, if he's disqualified, then obviously, and this is, I know what the answer that you are looking for, obviously I would bring Emily Bett Rickards because she's my best friend and my roommate, and we would have a blast. Also, I would love to bring my buddy Grant Gustin onto the show for 3 reasons. 1, he's super talented. 2, he's a big fan of the show, so he would like know what was going on. And 3, he would bring us so many ratings. Like that, everybody watches that guy. I wish I could say I don't understand it, but I do. Did you always want to be a writer, and why? Yes. I was never really very good at anything else. So I've always wanted to be, I think I was like in kindergarten when I started writing stories before I really even like knew how to make a sentence. And then, but I've always been in love with writing. There was a minute there where I wanted to be a pop star, but I think that was partly because I wanted to like write songs, but also be a pop star. But really, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've never been good at anything else, to be honest. So my choices were limited. What are your top 3 OTPs from the originals and the top 3 from the Vampire Diaries? So for those of you who don't know, OTP is one true pairing, I believe, which means who are the people who you like root for to end up together and like drive off into the sunset happy forever. I literally don't have any for the originals. I know that sounds weird, but for us, the show is very much about family, and romance is obviously a part of family, but it's sort of peripheral. I've worked on this show since the very first day, and I don't know who Julie and Mike intend to be the quote unquote endgame couples, and I don't know if they know either. They might and just not have let us in on it, but we're on this ride and we want to create dynamic characters with complicated relationships. We want to feel like we've been honest and true to what we believe and what the characters would do. They're flawed and sometimes they hurt each other, and that's life. And, you know, they don't make perfect choices. So, and I like that. I like telling stories about imperfect people who maybe are married and have feelings for somebody else. And what do you do with that when you're trying to be a good person? Or, you know, maybe, yeah. Anyway, I like it. I almost just spoiled you guys. The only couple that I've ever really championed on the show was Josh and Aiden, and you see how that went. So if you ever doubt whether or not I have some kind of secret pull over the powers that be on the originals, I don't. Are seasons outlined during the summer, or do the writers write arcs while they write individual episodes? Both. During the summer, we do a thing called boot camp, which means sort of like, I think we spent like maybe a month, maybe less, in the office without writing any specific episodes, but just sort of plotting out our season, big major tentpole moments that we want to see, how we want it to end, you know, the big emotional turns for each character. And then we start going episode by episode. But even as we're going episode by episode through the season, we take breaks. Like right now, we just finished working on episode 14 and we haven't started working on episode 15 yet because we're kind of taking a little bit of a breather to look at our last 7 episodes and see what do we want to happen here. And that's sort of how we go all season long. We take breaks, we reassess. We have plans and maps. We're not flying blind, but we like to sort of allow ourselves flexibility, see where chemistry works, where it doesn't, how actors work out, how schedules work out. We like to make room for new ideas and new inspiration. What are you enjoying most this Vampire Diaries season? Kat Graham. I love her, and I think that Bonnie is so compelling this season. I wrote reviews for the Vampire Diaries for the first 5 seasons, so you can go back and see that I was not always the biggest Bonnie fan, but I think she's just, I can't take my eyes off her this season, and part of that is the writing, and part of that is Kat's work, which has just developed this new depth that is just magnificent. Do you host open days on the sets of the originals in which fans can come and meet you and look around? Nope. We're working so hard. We're on such a time crunch. I don't think you guys ever realize, like, every minute counts on set. That said, we have some fans that come to visit us in Conyers when we're out on the streets. And as long as people are respectful of what we're trying to do, we're really happy, and we always really appreciate the support. What's your favorite scene ever from the originals? And then it says in parentheses, the best acted. I don't know if this is the best acted scene. My favorite scene ever from the originals, which I think is the best written scene from the originals thus far, is the final scene between Klaus and Rebecca in Farewell to Storyville, episode 116, before she leaves. We knew Claire was going to leave at episode 16 before the series even started, so we had been building to that moment for a long time. There's noise outside. And I think that it just came together really beautifully. I was so impressed. As far as like the best acting goes, I'm really partial to Elijah at the end of 219, right after he daggers his brother. He looks out on the city and there's just this look on his face that is just, I call it a Daniel Gilly special. He just nailed it and elevated the moment so much. And then I also just, maybe I'm biased because it's my episode, but I loved Phoebe so much in the big fight scene with Joe in episode 302. I think that they were fantastic, and it's probably the best work I've seen Phoebe do. And the final question is, what other than the originals are you working on? Not a lot, because I'm obsessed with the originals. I literally dream about the show every night. It gets very annoying. Fiction and reality blur, and I don't know what's happening, and I wake up in a state of utter confusion. But I am working on some other things just for fun on the side. I did write a book this summer, so news on that someday. And I am working on a fun pilot that I like. I've been writing songs with a friend of mine for a musical, a country musical set in the 90s. We'll see if that ever happens, but yeah, that's it. So book, pilot, potential musical, which will probably never happen because these songs are fun, but like I just listen to Hamilton all day, and what's even the point? Like, why even go on after that? Okay, that's it. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question. It probably was spoilery about the originals. You guys have very bad reading comprehension skills. I literally was like, no original spoilers, and the first response was like, when are Claus and Haley gonna have sex? But if I didn't answer your question, don't be offended. Only have so much time, and I have to go to work. Hope you guys all have good days. Thank you for watching this and the originals. And yeah, don't forget, tweet me with hashtag Eternal Night. You get a copy of my book. There are 3, so I'm going to choose at random anytime between now and midnight on Friday the 20th. Bye.